Hello, everyone, and welcome to the audio podcast in this series, the Pathology Storm. This is an audio podcast in collaboration with the Renal Patient Support Group. It's a Storm Robotics production, and this audio podcast, I'm going to provide a conclusion and summary in relating to the invited peer review manuscript and publication that highlights or provides an overview surrounding COVID-19 the biomedical visualization from a laboratory perspective. I'm your host, the Shientist, and I'm going to also in this audio podcast provide an overview through the abstract of this work as well. So in relating to what has been highlighted in previous podcasts or together with the previous audio podcast in this series around the Pathology Storm, the conclusion and summary are thus. So there has been a surge in the literature surrounding mechanisms attributing to SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 action on the immune response to a pathogen. SARS-CoV-2 patients present an increased level of blood coagulation factors and blood clotting complexities. The main mediators include thrombin, tissue factor, and fibrinogen. SARS-CoV-2 infection impairs the function of vascular endothelial function, resulting in increased production of thrombin and reduced fibrinolysin, which impacts clotting ability. Whilst it is known that COVID-19 impacts renal function or kidney function, leading to increased mortality, research surrounding interrogation of cytokine response on renal epithelium has not been substantiated. So the summary around this is that there is an indirect advantage in implementing ACE2 treatment to improve immune response against infection. ACE2 may also offer appropriate strategies for the management of symptoms that relate to SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 in most immunocompromised and immunosuppressed patients. However, what is still known is whether still not known is whether ACE2 should be or can be assigned at population level to totally prevent COVID-19 symptoms. So that notwithstanding, advances in laboratory practices allow the implementation of pathology assays and techniques, including microscopy, advances for visualization and analyses to understand host pathogen communication to preclude or prevent kidney disease impact. And so finally, in this audio podcast, alongside the sort of conclusion and summary, I am going to provide the abstract around this work as well. The full title of this work is A Review of Pathology and Analysis of Approaches to Easing Kidney Disease Impact, Host Pathogen Communication, and Biomedical Visualization perspective. In the peer review invited peer review works or publication, this work is a contribution under the theme in the book chapter, as part of the book chapter under the theme advanced microscopy and visualization of host pathogen communication. So the abstract reads as thus. So the introduction, in addition to affecting the upper respiratory tract, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronaviruses, SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 can target kidneys, resulting in disease impact. There is a lack of effective treatment to SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2. A more direct approach should be considered, to lower probable risk and onset of disease amongst immunocompromised and immunosuppressed patients, immunosuppressed individuals and patients. Angiotensin converting enzyme 2 or ACE2 has promising impact, including acting against SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 symptoms. Literature informs that ACE2 is expressed across several physiological systems, including lungs, cardiovascular, gut, kidneys, and central nervous systems, and across endothelial. So the aims around this work in the works was the works seek to investigate the causes and potential mechanisms during SARS infection CoV-2, the renal interaction, and the effects of acute kidney injury, AKI. The objectives of the work were to provide an understanding of the immunology and infection, to understand the objectives of this work was to provide an understanding of microscopy and visualization of host pathogen communication and principles of ACE2 in context of immunology and infection, to understand the impact of kidney disease. So the design around this work was to provide basic principles of ACE2 and the analysis and effect of immunology and pathological components important in the treatment and prevention of infection. The discussion around this works was that there's been a surge in literature surrounding mechanisms attributing to SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 action on immune response to pathogen, and there is an advantage to implementing ACE2 treatment to improve immune response against infection. The conclusion around the works are that ACE2 may provide appropriate strategies for the management of symptoms that relate to SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 in most immunocompromised and immunosuppressed patients. Visualization of ACE2 action can be achieved through microscopy to understand host pathogen communication. Now, in relating to any further works surrounding the invited peer review publication, there are main terminologies that people can search in particular search engines and databases, and those the main terminologies are nephrology, immunology, host pathogen, visualization, and biomedical sciences. So by putting those words in, or those terminologies in a search engine, will hopefully allow you to identify literature that links to this particular works as well. There is in the peer review manuscript, there is in the peer review works, there is a list of references and citations, appropriate citations. I won't go through those, but again, the full works will be available through the Renal Patient Support Group or the RPSG in time. Thank you for taking the time to go through this audio podcast, the audio podcast in this series, the Pathology Storm. This has been part of the Shientist Chartered Edition. This was an audio podcast surrounding the conclusion and summary around this particular invited work, invited publication. It's a Storm Robotics production in collaboration with the Renal Patient Support Group, the RPSG. I've been your host, the Shientist, and thank you once again for taking the time.